Cool. So I'm gonna jump into another subject that might seem a little bit out of nowhere, but I feel like you would understand me, and I know that this subject a pain in the A for everybody because I read your article that you wrote for the FP, um, why I left Norway, and the subject is obviously taxes. And so this is a pretty painful. I mean, I love the article, but it feels like you didn't really want to leave Norway, but you had to because you needed to build your company, make it successful, make it profitable. But those capital gain taxes, that correct? They well wouldn't.
So unrealized capital
Oh yes,
gains is
yes,
an
realized, yes.
important clarification.
And so a lot of questions based on that. You moved your company to Switzerland, right? Is that correct?
Well, first and foremost, me personally.
You personal.
It's like a personal tax that they have. So the context is Norway has a wealth tax of about 1.1%. It's a bit of a long story of the background on Norway, but basically Norway is oil rich. That wealth has been managed pretty well for about 50 years, and a lot of that has gone to the state, which is good, the people. And then that's become so much money that the oil fund is now very, very big. And so the Norwegian government is largely funded by the oil profits from that fund, which is in and of itself great. The idea when they set up the fund was to basically say, okay, then we can have lower taxes for the people because we can find revenue for the state here. Instead, what's happened is like strong socialist ideas have been sort of taken foot, and there's sort of this implicit assumption that, all the value creation comes from like fish and oil and energy that's already sort of Norwegian resources, so we should just like tax people extremely aggressively. No one should, be super rich. And so you have these sort of socialist ideas. That means there's a very unique wealth tax, which is on your net assets that Norway has. By the way, Norway also has some of the highest marginal tax on capital gains, on salaries, on other things as well. But this one basically makes it extremely hard to build tech companies from Norway because you raise a lot of capital, it's equity, it's illiquid, you're losing all of that money, you're burning it. But I basically was faced with a tax bill that was many times higher than my net salary because of this scheme. And so I decided to leave along with hundreds of others running businesses from Norway. And so that's really the story. And then I've become this sort of involuntary unrealized capital gains influencer by these things being discussed in various countries here and there, the UK, the US, then California now, and so my story. And I wrote this whole piece on this whole story, and that tends to get shared whenever someone considers doing taxes like this.
So a couple of follow-ups. The first one is, given everything that you've said, is there a tax heaven country for both people and their businesses? And any jurisdiction that is doing it right, especially for crypto companies?
Also, Switzerland is very business friendly. What I will say is like, I've never worried too much about taxes or like paying taxes. Like even if Norway has like 50% capital gains tax and same on salaries, like that never worried me if I make money. This problem with the wealth tax is really that it is extremely weirdly, so it hits really weirdly where you don't have the money, or your incentive is to have a lot of debt in the company, or not raise a lot of money, because then you sort of get paper rich, and then this tax hits you really hard. Or overinvest in housing, like people spend a lot of money on housing in Norway because you then also lever up and it has low tax valuation, blah, blah, blah. So I really don't think a lot about taxes or like worry too much about it. I think it's mostly like you just need to pay taxes when you make money. And I think the fundamental principle of taxes that you should have is like, when a voluntary transaction happens in the economy, I sell you something, I go buy something at the store, my company makes money. Transactions has happened, and like the state can take a cut. And then there's a political question of like, should that stake be high or low? And it's fine to have different opinions on it. And so I think that's not something that I care that much about or worry too much about. But ultimately, that's fine. There's just like a fundamentally different thing when you start to tax unrealized things that you don't know the actual value of, and it hasn't had a voluntary transaction in the economy. So that's how I think about it. And then I think, for instance, in the EU, I think there's a lot of like other regulations that's bad for business, GDPR and the AI Act and things that are just like really, hurting European businesses and European wealth creation and growth, which is sort of a little bit different from like the tax question. And I worry more about those things than per se taxes, as long as you do it in the sensible way, which is to tax transactions. Yeah.